Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Welcome to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney, and we are back in our live leadership studio today with three folks in person. You'll hear from two others, but one's quiet today. But we have our producer, Tatiana Dominguez, brought us all together. So she's there on the headset and she will, wave to us if we're going off. But this may sound different technically because we're not used to all being in the same room. But bear with us because we hope that we get some back and forth that we aren't able to get when we're all at home in our own living rooms. So I have back in the studio today, Blanca Wingfield and Tom Armstrong. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hello.
Two of our awesome leaders that I've worked with for a long time. My God, we've worked together a while through many lives, but it's good to see you guys here. Last week I gave you guys some scenarios. I've got two more for us to get through today to hear how you would handle these management conundrums. And if you're at home listening, you can see if you agree with us, disagree, if you want to add on and so forth, and you can send us an email afterwards with your ideas. So here's the first one, and these guys have no idea what I'm going to throw at them. So here they go. You've just taken over a team with a reputation. They get results, but the vibe is terrible. There's gossip, siloed communication, and a sense of fear around making mistakes. During your first few one-on-ones, team members are hesitant to speak freely. You know that turning the culture around will take time, but also you're expected to keep performance high. What's your plan?
Performance is already high?
Yeah, well, this team they get results, but bad place to be.
Are people leaving it because it's so I'm just wondering because
you're just fine with it.
I'd hate to improve it into a failure, what if everybody gets along and then their performance drops,
Exactly, Tom. That's the question.
Sometimes people feed on the drama and it's seems to be functioning.
But I think
I'm not advocating for bad culture. But
I'm going to go check with your team right now. I think more importantly, they're kind of a pain in the ass for other people to deal with. Like other departments, maybe they're not giving out communication. They're holding on to their own stuff. They're probably pretty backbiting and competitive with each other even. Yeah. And they produce good results. Mm-hmm. So how do you, and we know it's going to take time, right? But what do you do to not improve them into worse results?
There's I love this game called Mind because it's a cooperative game. It's a really cool card game, you gotta
tell us now what it is.
You have all you have to do is you have a stack of 100 cards from 1 to 100, and you have to. Everybody gets you start out with 1 card each. If I have a 3, I want to put mine down real quick because everybody puts it down whenever they want. But if you have a 90, you're going to wait a while because probably everybody else has some. I have to put them in order. 1, 2. I have if I have a 3, I want to put mine down before Blanca puts her 40 down. Right. Put her 40 down. Her 45. Her number 45
40 down.
Yeah. Done.
So it only works if basically it's a cooperative game, right? And when people play this, they feel very unified. You see the culture feels really good. And you get this it's called Mind because you sort of develop one mind together. And then that same group of people.
So it's Mind with a D.
Yeah, Mind with a D. And,
not mine.
Not mine. And
like landmines.
You have to play a few rounds and eventually you build up the amount of cards that you're playing. It gets harder and harder. But you really do kind of bond with people. That same group of people then plays, I don't know, any kind of really competitive game, and they just turn mean. And so you can have the same exact people get totally different personality as a group, depending on the rules of the game. So I'm wondering, when you tell me this, the first thing I'm thinking is, have I created some kind of incentives for non-cooperation and because that might still get results, but it can create toxicity and lack of trust because I know I told this person something that helped them last time, but they ended up getting more sales than me, which meant I didn't get to go to Hawaii or whatever it is, So can I is it that the rules of the game just need to be engineered slightly to create a more cooperative rule set so that those people will now actually cooperate because they're probably wonderful people, same group of people as anywhere, but you can have someone be totally not rumory and gossipy in one context and have them become gossipy and rumory in another set of rules. So that's just something I would check out initially with what can be tweaked to change the environment, not the people.
Cool. Okay, so that's your first step.
That's my first step. And then I'm looking over at
while
Blanca.
Blanca's talking, you think of your second, third, and fourth steps.
I got
You
steps.
got an idea?
That's so interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out because what you just said about playing the game, I was like, that was one of my first thoughts. I was like, it's got to be something group oriented that we're doing so that we can figure out how we're all looking at this environment. Because if they think they're succeeding, they don't see anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They really don't see anything wrong. So I don't know if it's like them working with other people from other departments. I don't know. This is such a hard one for me. Because high performing is what makes it difficult, to Tom's point. Because if they're performing well.
But chances are, if there's gossip and backbiting, then they may not like that, though. The chances are them liking that on a day-to-day basis, I don't know. But I think there's one way you can find out, is you can actually talk about it, right? So
Sure.
You could have a retreat, an offsite. You could have an outside facilitator. You could say, what do we love about the way our group performs? What do we not? What would we change if we could? You could get them doing all of that kind of stuff.
That's so funny because that's always my first thought, because I guess we do it so much as a company. Like, it's my first thought and I went past it. Do you know what I mean? But that's always the first thought, like getting everybody together and trying to figure out how we can work together, how we're being seen by outside teams that we want to do. So there's a lot of, assessments that you can do just to figure out 5 dysfunctions of a team, things like that you can kind of put out there and do with your teams. And then it gets people to look at things in a very structured way, as opposed to just gossip or hearsay or things from outside. I think, actually, now that I say that, 5 dysfunctions of a team would be really interesting to do with a team of that nature that is high performing, but does appear to have some sort of internal strife potentially.
Yeah, what Blanca's talking about is it's a program by Patrick Lencioni and his team. He has a book called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and they also have a program that you could do with surveys and so forth that we've done a few times with companies, and it's really interesting, especially at companies like that where there's some sort of struggle that they don't want to look at. The good news is that if they're performing on some level, they value performing, and therefore they want
they want to be better.
They're striving
whatever
to,
they're,
which is also something you could start with is in this meeting that we're setting up. Hopefully it's like a full day that you can dedicate, or half a day to this. But yes, tell them how successful they are as a team. Praise that. Show them all the data. Also, then share about data that supports the for us to get to the next level. Teams show them Project Aristotle or something that demonstrates to them that, like, if I create a what is that called? What's the term? Psychological safety. Teams that have that sense of psychological safety, which I know we have here, but we can even improve, is my sense we can improve on it. And if they'll know the message you're sending out, that won't come as a surprise, that you will actually be able to achieve even more. Like, it'll improve our performance as a team, which is really important for all these reasons, right? Lay out the reasons why you need that. And then you might even try like having them engage in the kind of games that I was discussing, gamify it, because the nice thing about those games or some kind of game situation like that is that it removes the context of the baggage of the work that they do day to day. Because if I sit down with a team and I say, the things that we're doing, what do you think is getting in the way of? It's just too complex. They know too much in a way to be able to simplify it. But by gamifying it or creating a non-work context, of course they're at work, but non-regular task associated context for it through games or something, you can then sort of demonstrate it through that experiential side. Like, instead of, it's more concrete because they're actually experiencing it, and say, like, what was the difference between us as a group when we were doing this version that was very competitive versus the one that was more cooperative? And then once we kind of discuss that as a group, how can we at work get from A to B? Not 100%, but just in some ways, because this thing about turning the team around, their culture around, is not like next week they're going to be different. So my goal might be in a year we will, and I should have an internal goal of what that is. In a year, these are the kind of behaviors that we'll see that are different, knowing I'm not going to suddenly get this like loving team right away.
Yeah, and some of them are going to come around faster than others. I think one thing that's very interesting to say to people who are results-driven folks is to be able to say, okay, what do you think gets in the way of our results even being better?
Yeah.
Right.
Because that is when they will say, well, if we didn't fight each other, we could fight this, or we could do this. Or if I trusted people more, I could do this. then I think that's a way for them to say, oh, okay, to make a list of those things. If there's opportunity for growth here, what do we all want to commit to in the hopes of getting our performance even higher?
Yeah.
I think that could be exciting with people who are results driven people.
It has to be, you have to be able to see an end game with results driven people. The woo-woo, as they like to call it, or the feel good or feel better, or this team will be more harmonious, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't land well. And they're like, we're already making money. We're already doing what we're supposed to be doing.
I'll have my friends outside.
Exactly. It has to be something that's really hardcore. They have to be able to look at those things that you want and that you may know, like psychological safety, that, and trust and all those things that build better teams and help them make more money. But they need to actually have that still there as well. They have to have those, hardcore end results listed along with it, or it lands a little flat.
Yeah. And I think whatever you decide and that the group decides, because think about it, those are strong personalities in there. Those are people who are willing to push their weight and their tenacity in this world to make something happen. And that is a type of person. That is a strong-willed person. So they need to be on board with one or two things. Maybe it's one that we can try. And then you need, I think to your point, we need to make it measurable. So that they have that as a result too. Whether it's like, okay, we're going to do a survey every time, or we're going to survey other groups and see what they think about, let's put our money where our mouth is, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever the thing is.
One other thing I want to throw in is a mistake that, you hear some managers make in this kind of situation is they get feedback from the team or from the other departments, right? Other departments are telling me that my team that I have is toxic. And their attitude stinks or whatever. And then I go to my team and I say, guys, other departments are saying X about it and we need to turn this around. I can't do anything like that. I can't say I'm hearing things about your attitude or whatever's like the worst feedback. So I have to hear what the other departments are saying and I tell them, thank you for your feedback. I'm not going to express to anybody what you told me, but I'm just going to pay a lot of attention. I'm going to make sure I'm in those meetings to see the dynamic. And then I'm going to give direct feedback based on what I observe. And then they're like, cool, you got this. And then you're not going to throw me under the bus for bringing it up to you. You build trust with the other departments that way. And then you follow through on that. And I'll just have to go to those meetings, see what's happening, pay more attention. Then I can go to the person and say, I just want to let you know, I did see this and this, like just noticing that in the meetings, sometimes you're saying negative things about others. And this is the exact thing that I noticed. My request is that, we're just going to try to trim that down in the meeting. It's okay if it happens sometimes. We're trying to bring down the amount of that because I think it'll actually make us stronger as a team. Is that something you can help me out with? And then, depending on your delivery and your relationship with the person, but you can just talk about the behavior and see if they can. And usually people are like, oh, I didn't even really realize it. Or they might push back in the moment, but then think about it later and go like, yeah, I don't want to be that person. Didn't even realize I was doing that,
I think that's great feedback, Tom. I think that there have been a lot of managers, and I'm sure I've done it myself, who have just used the easy route, which is to say, well, everybody else thinks you're a pain in the ass, not me.
Throw the other department under the bus. Yeah, exactly.
You're wonderful. I don't know what
I
they're
think
talking
that's
about.
a very mature response, and really, you earn trust on all sides when you do that. I think that's a very good note for a lot of folks out there.
Yeah, and it's totally necessary because what other people think they see outside of it may not be actually true. They're coming, they're seeing very different things. They see things from a very different perspective. They don't know the goals your team may have or whatever. So you taking the time out to say, I'm going to observe that for myself and see if I see the same thing and then act on what I actually see. Yeah, is a great way to go about it.
Yeah, because nowadays people term toxic can also mean that person's just direct and assertive with what they believe, their opinions, what they want. But to someone else, that's, they're not polite enough or they're not careful enough. And that they will now term that as toxic when maybe it's not. Maybe it's just a different working style. So go back and listen to our podcasts on different different episodes. Go back and listen to the different episodes on working with different working styles. Yeah, same with that idea of kind of toxic positivity. You could turn that around easily and say, just because you have to have everything be nice isn't necessarily the right way.
And, it's a little personal, but the relationship I had with my sisters growing up was very, we fought. Sometimes out of anger, but most of the time it was out of love in a way. It's hard to describe. And
would they say that, Tom?
They would. We talk about it now. It's all love now, but definitely... But a lot of smart aleckness and something that could be interpreted as toxic, but actually for us it was it was a way of expressing love. And I still to this day I bring that to my workplace.
We know.
Everybody knows this, right? I can be a smart aleck, but And so I have to be mindful of that, but also it could be if someone else is watching the dynamic from the outside of me and one of my colleagues, and we have a little banter.
Yes.
Right?
Actually, that happened.
Is establishing trust.
Yes.
I'm sure it's happened. Yeah.
No, that has
literally
happened.
with me, right?
With you.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure.
I mean, this is I had two people come up to me after one of our staff meetings where we had we have a snowball fight this is going to sound crazy. We have a snowball fight every holiday time in the winter at our big staff meeting, and they're soft, cushy balls that are being thrown, but it's just like a fun icebreaker, like middle of the day when everyone's tired. We just divide into two sides of the room and we just throw as many as you can get over to the other side. And when the timer ends in like 2 minutes, whoever has more snowballs on their side, loses or whatever. So we played that game as we always do. And I had a couple of people come up to me one year and say, can I talk to you? Yes. I'm very uncomfortable with the culture that comes around these snowball fights.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
And that's a legitimate complaint they have.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like,
and
that's
so I
their
said,
experience.
Okay,
Yep.
do you feel unsafe? Do you feel, no. I just don't like how a couple of people go at it so aggressively, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then I said, well, do you feel like violated or like, I'm trying to figure out were they getting hurt with these cushy balls coming across. No. I just don't like the atmosphere that brings or whatever. So then when I dug in with it a little bit more with them, and luckily I had that relationship where I could do that, I said, okay. I said, part of understanding and being part of a team is understanding different people's ways of being. And just because you're not as comfortable, because once we got to it, they weren't comfortable with competitive play. Other people are. And it can be like that we're saying that only collaborative play is allowed here. And we're never going to bring this type of energy into our space is very limiting and potentially damaging to an environment. So we have to let people have those moments right now. But I do think it was an eye-opening moment for them. To their credit, they really listened and they were like, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way. That sometimes that even though no one's getting hurt, it's all in the spirit of fun, even though that is not how you grew up or you didn't grow up with that kind of feeling, that it's okay for 2 minutes a year to just go, okay, this is how we're going to play this way.
And the same thing, what we were just talking about when it comes to teams looking at other teams. You may have a team that is a very particularly aggressive team. And especially you started out the scenario with they're very high performing. So if you have, and I'm just using this as examples, if one team is the sales team, right? They may be very aggressive and high performing, period. And then you have another team, and these are all stereotypes. I'm 100% aware.
We're going to get lots of letters today.
But, you have like the creative team, who works on things who may not be as competitive in that same way. They may see, the two teams handle things very differently. So that's why it is very important, to Tom's point, for everybody to look at their team and say, okay, I'm seeing this thing that you see as well in the same light, and I will address it, as opposed to just taking other people's, information and then trying to work it out with your team in that from outside info.
There were also 2 times last week where I reached out to a colleague to say, hey, this thing where we had this banter and then I said X, was that too far?
Or you did.
And yeah, it happened twice last week. And both times you're like, oh, no, I thought it was hilarious. But the thing is, I have to also have my self-awareness and be caring and show that I actually do not ever mean to harm, and make sure that because a part of the fun of the banter is that you're getting close to an edge, right? That's what you're playing around with, is that line, and it's possible to cross it. So to protect my relationship, to make sure I'm protecting that, I don't want to harm somebody really. So I will say, like, did I go too far? I won't say like, did that hurt your feelings? Because then you can have a little pride there and say, no, of course not. But it's like, did I go too far? And then if they're like, no, or even yes, usually they lead it by saying, oh, that's so nice of you to ask.
Right.
They feel cared for.
Yeah. So that even if you did, they kind of give you and I think that is true. I think as you gain power and you are the boss, you have to be more and more careful with that.
Oof.
I've made that mistake.
You have a lot more power with your words.
You have a lot more power.
Yeah. I've made that mistake. No, that's hard. All right. Well, we really went all over the place on that one. All right. So here we go. Here's the last one. Okay.
We only did one?
That was one.
Like 5 questions in one.
We solved the world in that one.
We really did.
Or caused more problems, maybe. All right. One of your steady, dependable team members has been in the same role for several years. They're great at it, and they have no interest in moving up or expanding their skills. You've tried nudging them towards stretch projects, but they politely decline. While they're not a problem, you wonder if they're holding the team back from evolving. Do you leave them be and appreciate their consistency, or do you continue to push for growth?
I gotta say, you really want to push.
Yeah? Okay.
I'd say push. Now, what I'll say is, if they're good in their thing, I think that's where you look at what are their interests? Because you may be pushing them into projects they're not interested in. So, like, what are their real strengths? Have that conversation with them. Like, what are you passionate about? Like, what will be the thing that would just push you to the next level in this company? Because you got to have something, right? And then if you can get that answer from them or get something, from them, then you can start to try to push them in that direction. Because often we think that person is really good at this thing and we want to push them in that direction. That might not be the thing they're passionate about. Might be the thing they're good at, but not the thing that they're really passionate about. That happened to me at this company. I was doing something. I was good at it. Did I love it specifically? No. And so then I asked, I was like, I think I want to do something else. They were like, oh my God, yes. Let's put you in that. And then that's where I was able to actually grow, because I'd been doing the job that I've been doing very well for a long period of time. And it was totally fine. It wasn't until we looked at my other strengths and they decided, oh, you have other strengths and we want you to do something else. We see more for you. Then when we started doing that, that's when I was able to grow to the next level. So I think with certain people, it has to be that conversation as well.
Because you think with you, it was helpful to have.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Okay, Tatiana's dying to get in here, so let's let her in. I knew she couldn't keep quiet. Go ahead.
I can't keep quiet on this one. My first thought was, oh, thank God, someone that doesn't want a promotion. Yes, just do your job.
So you better hope they don't want a promotion. The problem is they still want more money every year.
Oh, that's a good point.
No, I just was, because it's like, from my perspective, those back end things, it's just like, no, I just need to make sure the server's okay. Is that okay? Like, just check the server, right? Whatever.
You don't need to evolve all the time.
Yeah, like, it's just, the thought of like, oh, I have to push, and, it's just kind of like, is it working? Good. Yes. Organize the closet. I love it.
Yeah. If they're not also wanting,
more money
and promotions and stuff like that, that's tricky.
I agree with my instinct on it is like, thank goodness there's someone that I can just get the institutional knowledge and the benefits of that without, because you're really good at your job. And if I promote you, you won't be for a while. And, so too many people getting promoted at the same time can be very hard. Mm-hmm. So it's nice to have a rock or an anchor in a position, and they're happy doing that. And then you're right. If they also want to have the conversation can be just like, there is a window, then the bottom of the window is, this amount of money, and the top of the window is this amount of money for someone in your position. So that's the ceiling. You'll never get past that unless you transition to the role above you. And that role, this is the window, right? This is the area of financial growth that's available to you. So knowing that, and, of course, I'm always prioritizing, like, how do I grow the bench of my employees? It's really important to me. I want to grow the bench and enable so that maybe there's a way for me to grow, because I know someone can come take my position when it's necessary. So you add value to the team by being a possibility for that. However, you're also very valuable as human, exactly the position you're doing. Mm-hmm. I just don't want you to leave us because you're not making enough. And the thing is, that's our situation. So I just want to make sure that we're always communicating about it and collaborating on this problem, because if you do hit that peak earning point and it's not enough, there's really only two paths. There's three paths. Just put up with that. One of them. The other is to grow into the next position, which I would really love you to do. I think you're very capable and would do a great job, and you'll be able to use your knowledge you have now there. It'll just be more challenges, or you'd have to go somewhere else, which is the worst possible outcome. So I want to, figure how do we stay over here and work with me on that. And people are like receptive to it because they feel, that you're looking out for them, and that you understand that I think sometimes bosses forget that their team have other options. You think you can just drive them because that's the thing. And, but I want to retain that person. So I guess that's my approach.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think, a leadership pipeline to me is always important. I agree with you, Tom. People don't realize if they're not developing people underneath them, what happens from the perspective of the CEO or the president or who's ever above you is then they go, oh, I can't move Tom because I got nobody that can do what he does. So it does stop your growth if you're not constantly building people up, right? I think the hard part philosophically, where I see where Blanca's coming from, is that if you value growth and development, and especially if you're a leadership development company, that's where you always have to question, are we really putting our money where our mouth is in terms of pushing people to put a little more weight on that bar?
Yeah.
Right? Do a little bit more, because we believe that there's opportunity for growth everywhere. No matter your age, no matter how long you've been there, no matter your skill set, it just may take some more risk or take some more whatever. However, philosophically, I can believe that. And then I have pushed up for real even in our company with people in the past where I sat in every single review. I sit in every review of every employee. And for 7 years in a row, I'd hear the same note to this particular employee of like, take initiative. We'd love for you to take initiative. What would you like to take initiative? To one day I just looked at her and was like, you're not going to take initiative. Are you like, can we just take this off of this form? Because I don't know about you, but I can't sit here anymore asking or listening to someone else ask you and you nod your head and wish that you could be that person. Like, let's just take it off.
Yeah. I mean, there are some people, let's be crystal clear, who in the moment are like, it's good enough. This is good enough for me. I am at the salary that works for my life. I am at the level of respectability in my position that works for me in my life. And I'm okay being here. Got it. And I think when you're looking at a staff overall, that's a very small percentage of your staff. Small. That's a very small, because you do need the people to keep the server running and you do need the people to clean out the clock, like whatever it is. Yeah. And you have that, but that's a very small percentage.
That's true.
The bulk of the people there are people who are potentially who want to move ahead, but are afraid and don't know how.
Yes.
I had that when I first came into this job. My job was offered to someone else. They turned it down because they were afraid. And they resented me for like a first year and a half.
Oh, you think it was only a year and a half? I think we're 20 years in and that's still
20 years. Yeah, right? And they were mad at me because I took the job. I got the job. I didn't take the job.
It's not me. Anybody out there is wondering. I wasn't around yet.
You know what I mean? But,
we'll say when it's you.
You have that person. And then you have the people who they want to move ahead. They just don't know how. And that's our job, to help them figure out how to move ahead if you see that in them. And then people who haven't figured out their way, their purpose, all those things. But yeah, I think there is so much to be said for, as you said, that person has the institutional knowledge, who's there, who, keeps the ship upright and they're completely happy with where they are. That's fine. That normally is just a small percentage of your staff.
Yeah. And if they're not bothered by people surpassing them and all that stuff, I think there's something right about that steady Eddie. But all right, you guys, thank you. I think we've tackled so many hearty problems today.
Very fun. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks, Tatiana, for pulling this together.
Yay.
And we'll try it again another time. So thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.